Welcome to another episode of In Good Company. And I will tell you, I bring down the level of good company in this conversation. I've got my friend here and former colleague. He doesn't probably know it. He should know it. Somewhat of a mentor. Obviously, your professional accolades far exceed anything that I'm ever going to do. And your impact and scope of who you touch is exponential. So I'm glad to call you a friend, Dr. Joseph Ellison. He's the assistant superintendent for JCPS high school, assistant superintendent of high schools at JCPS, right. That's Jefferson County Public Schools, an educator for over 24 years, also an ordained minister and a father of two. Joe, how are you doing today?
I'm well, Jimmy. How are you?
Good. I'm glad I was allowed to pull you back into my circle. So tell the world who you are.
Man,
by the way, that's a nice watch.
Oh, well, thank you. My wife likes
to spend money. Sorry, Shannon.
You said it. I did. Well, since we're talking wife, so I am the husband of Shannon, father of twins, Joey and Sydney, boy and a girl, 13, 8th grade. It's an interesting phase in life, that is for certain. The journey here, wow. Like to pause and reflect is not something we do often in education. You know right. That as a former educator, a lot of go. But I was born and raised in Cincinnati, in the inner city of Cincinnati, Madisonville. Graduated from Walnut Hills High School at 17. I skipped a grade. I don't know if you know that.
No, I didn't.
Skipped second grade.
What is that? You reclassified? For athletics or for academics?
It was for academics, sir. Definitely not athletics. And took off to college at 17.
Awesome.
Cumberland College, which is now University of the Cumberlands, southeastern Kentucky, nestled in the hills of Appalachia.
Right.
Spent 5 years down there because I thought I was going to be the next Johnny Cochran, next big criminal defense attorney, until I took a semester of poli-sci classes and decided I like poli-sci, but I don't know if this is my life.
Right.
And was undecided for a little while, picked up a communications minor and English major. My parents said, that's nice. What are you going to do with that? Yeah. And
the same with my history major.
Exactly. Well, you taught too, right. But
we went down the same path.
We did. And an education professor saw me walking across campus one day. Her name was Norma Patrick. And she called me by name. I had never met this woman before. She said, Joe Ellison. I said, yes. She said, I'm Norma Patrick. Hi, Miss Patrick.
Right. Did you know who she was?
No idea.
Okay.
She said, I'm an education professor, and I hear you're doing a lot of work with teenagers on these traveling revival teams. We would take a group of 5 or 6 of us college students and drive to a church and spend the weekend with youth group. Friday night lock-in, Saturday night something. We would lead worship on Sunday, come back to campus. So I said, yes, ma'am, I am. She said, I think you need to consider education as a major. Mm-hmm. I said, I've never thought about teaching a day in my life.
Right.
She said, I really think you should consider it.
You were doing it. You just didn't know it was called education.
Exactly. And that was the conversation I had with my parents that weekend. You know, I mean, that's what my dad said. He said, you're doing it. All these revival teams and things. You do youth ministry, like you're already doing it. And I thought about it some more and picked up secondary education as a double major with my English major, kept my comm minor, and graduated from Cumberland's in 01. Mm-hmm. Went to Owensboro, sight unseen. Right. Had 3 job offers at the time.
So you went to Owensboro because there was a job there, or just, hey, I want to go to Owensboro?
Because there was a job there. Right, okay. I did not know a thing about Owensboro when I got there in 2001. But I had 3 job offers, one in Lexington, one in a very small district up on the Ohio River across from Cincinnati called Silver Grove, and then the one in Owensboro. And I took that one because it allowed me to use my English major and my communications minor. I taught 5 years, was an assistant girls basketball coach, mock trial team sponsor, ultimate Frisbee club sponsor, like doing all the young teacher stuff. And then I was hired in JCPS in 2006 as an assistant principal. Started at Fern Creek High School, was a principal intern. So it was a training program then that was designed to develop assistant principals into principals.
Was that with Tito?
Tito was Fern Creek
What was
for
his
1
last name?
year.
Yeah.
Tito Castillo.
Yeah.
And then Houston Barber my second year.
Okay.
And then I was a principal intern at Valley in Atherton. From there, I went to Southern with Jerry Keepers. And I think as I was on my way out of Southern, you were pretty much on your way in, if I remember that correctly.
Jerry hired me.
Okay.
Hope I'm not getting anybody in trouble. He hired me, and then they did the turnaround
switch with the turnaround. Right. So I left in November.
Actually, I take that back. David Burns told Jerry Keepers to hire me to get me in the building to coach baseball.
Burnsy. Gotta love Burnsy. So I left Southern November of 12, went to Seneca. We ended up working together as colleagues at Seneca. And then from Seneca, actually left in 2016, went out to Shelby County for about 3.5 years, was principal at Martha Lane Collins High School.
By the way, that really tested our friendship.
Sorry.
You were so tight-lipped about that.
I was still a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of did. But that was a really good experience for me to step outside of JCPS, lead a school on my own. I grew a lot in a short amount of time, and then was recruited back to the district, into the high school office. Came back in January of 2020 as an executive administrator, which is, I tell people it's like the assistant principal to a principal,
right,
if the assistant superintendent is the principal. And supported 12 schools in that role, and then was blessed to step into the assistant superintendency 4 years ago.
Right.
So it's been an interesting journey filled with, I would say, decisions that I didn't know I was going to make in advance, career moves that I definitely didn't think were going to come.
Right.
But here I am now.
Yeah. I thought you would always come back to JCPS, but when you left JCPS to go to Shelby or Martha Lane Collins in Shelby County, I thought, man, that was a curveball I didn't see coming. But I understood, and you're obviously a leader of people and a leader of education. So any chance you had an opportunity to grow your career and do that, it made 100% perfect sense. But you talk about coming back and getting curveballs thrown at you. You were leading the academy's work, and the academies of Louisville are obviously, I liken it to almost going full circle back to this job training where we're mixing not only college ready but career ready, and getting students in real world application of how they're going to use their skills coalesced with intercurricular learning. So it's a great opportunity. So you're pretty much leading the academy's work in the high schools.
I'm one of the key leaders. So in the high school zone, we have 27 high schools, serves almost 28,000 students in our school district that serves almost 98,000. So we're obviously the largest school district in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. 15 of those 27 schools comprise what we call the academies of Louisville. And they are our typical quote unquote reside schools. And if you just live somewhere and wake up and need to go to high school based on your address, you go to X school. Several years ago, 2016 or so, Christy Rogers was the director of career technical education for the district, and she conceived the academies of Louisville. It was primarily designed to improve the level of engagement of students in school. We find through studies that student engagement in school starts to drop off about the third grade. So you literally peak engagement with students third grade. If you look at what else starts third grade,
everything else,
right? But the big thing is testing. So you have state accountability testing that's introduced third grade. Teachers feel like they have to make sure they are teaching specific things to prepare students well for the test, and that passion for learning for a lot of kids dissipates. We see that in middle school for sure, where kids are going through that odd, awkward, hormonal, developmental stage. And then we see it in high school where kids are like, I'm done with school. So Christy had this idea of basically developing schools within schools, called academies, where students would have a sense of identity, but they would also pursue a specific career technical education pathway that would prepare them for life after high school. And so you have the academies of Louisville, where every student comes into a freshman academy. They're able to explore the various career technical education pathways that are offered. They choose a pathway that they move through their sophomore, junior, and senior year. And our intention is that every student graduates what I call Diploma Plus. It means they come out senior year with a diploma plus something else that makes them ready for life after high school. So it could be they've started a college transcript because they're taking dual credit courses. It could be they've earned college credit because they've passed an advanced placement exam or an international baccalaureate exam, or it could be that they've earned an industry certification because they've passed an industry certification exam or an inter-program assessment. Either way, we want kids to walk out with something more than a diploma, because long gone are the days where you can get a good life-sustaining wage job on just a high school diploma. It just doesn't happen anymore. And so it helps our kids position themselves to enter into the workforce a tier above entry level, or to go on to college or university, or to do both simultaneously. We have students who graduate with skilled trade certifications and have a job and go to JCTC. So we are able to graduate students with options that they would not have otherwise had, as well as better engage them while they're in school. So connections between career tech ed courses and your traditional math, English, science, social studies courses are key to that. The way we structure buildings into smaller learning communities with an academy principal, most people would know that as an assistant principal. An academy counselor that supports a smaller group of students. So you take a large school, you break it into a much smaller piece. Students have a greater sense of identity, sense of belonging, higher engagement, more success.
Two thoughts. One, this I feel like it almost goes back to, I'm going to say this and it might be the wrong word, like tribalism. Like you get smaller groups of people that can interact on a day-to-day basis. There's more that can be done out of that.
And they have things in common.
Exactly.
Right? That's the big thing. So if you think about Southern, for example, where you and I both ran around for a little while, there's a metal academy. I was just at Southern a little while ago, so they come to mind.
Tool and die. And
has
automotive.
Machine tool and die, automotive, auto body, right? And so then as an English teacher, if I were an English teacher in the metal academy, when we're reading texts, I would be drawing in things that these students would be interested in. It might be an article about breaking down this car, or it might be an article about restoring old cars.
Or if you're a science teacher, you're talking about the chemical bond that creates, or I don't know if it's a chemical or the chemical
reaction or whatever it is, right? That causes paint to adhere to metal when the dents have been knocked out of it and it's been sanded down, right? Because a kid is linked into that based on their interest. And so, it creates this smaller community. But it doesn't just randomly take kids and break them into smaller groups. It's actually built around their interests and things that they want to pursue, which of course increases engagement and interest for the student, and by default helps us ensure better success.
What if I said, Joe, you're pigeonholing kids? They don't know what they don't need to be a welder at 15. Why won't we let them expand their mind and see different things?
So what I would say is students have that opportunity. As soon as they walk into one of our academy high schools freshman year, they're exploring all of the pathways that are there. So a kid may walk in thinking they want to be a welder and realize there's a health science academy there. And they want to go into pre-nursing. There you go. Or you might have a kid who walks in, dead set on, I'm going to be a doctor, and I'm going to go through nursing, and I'm going to earn my RN, and then I'm going to go on to medical school. And they work through one of our pathways and they're successful, and they realize this is not what I want to do. And what they've actually done in essence is save their parents, and maybe even us, if we're supporting them with scholarships or grants or whatever, a whole lot of money in doing what a lot of us have done, which is work partway through college, decide this isn't for me, and become undecided or switch into something else, or just flat leave college altogether and not end up with a degree at all.
And I think someone that would say that also doesn't understand the schema and how the more knowledge you build on the base of your learning pyramid allows you to stack more and more. So even hell, you could walk out of there as a apprentice welder and go be an electrician or be business owner or a CEO.
Correct.
Like it's just more foundational knowledge.
Well, and what kids are gaining is more than just the technical knowledge. Like they are learning how to engage with peers, how to engage with supervisors. They're learning those soft skills that supervisors often say kids don't graduate high school with. Yep. Executive functioning skills, how to organize your time, how to see the end goal of a project and chunk out your time to make sure you can go from here to there in the amount of time that's a lot. All of those skills that are needed, technical reading, technical math, all of those skills are going to be needed in the workforce at some point. Yep. And so whether a student actually continues in the job field for which they've earned a certification or not, they've still walked away with skills that are going to be valuable for them in whatever field they land in.
Exactly. Yep. That's what I love about it. And you know, if you want a testament to that, let's say I was a pre-law, pre-medicine, baseball player, baseball coach, educator, ran a couple businesses. Now I'm in real estate.
Right.
And so I would joke all the time because I came with a tremendous amount of debt, but the things that I learned along the way have put me where I am today.
Yeah, and you're a hell of a salesman.
I appreciate that. I also have a sports science or a exercise science degree where I did strength and conditioning, but all those things add up to who I am today. So I only threw that out there because I've heard it so many times. And,
and every individual is a sum of their life experiences, right? And so the more experiences students have, the better they are. That's why our business partners are so critical in the academies of Louisville work. While the career tech ed pathways are the lifeblood, what really brings opportunities and experiences to life for our kids is the relationships with business partners. I mean, you're a partner with Seneca right now, and we have kids who never thought about real estate, never thought about earning the license, never even thought about entrepreneurship until they started to engage with you as a business partner and began to understand the various opportunities. They may never go into real estate, but the skills that they develop around entrepreneurship will be critical for whatever business they decide to own and operate. And so, business partners really play a significant role. And I like to think that we are helping to feed the workforce needs that we have in our community. And so there's some give and take there with our colleagues out in the community, but I think they are beginning to see the dividends that are paid out from that work, and therefore are willing to invest in our kids.
And so, 5 years, 6 years of the academy's really been.
This is eight. This is year 8.
I remember it was like 5-star school. Like I feel like there were some iterations that have now been streamlined into the academies of Louisville.
Look at you pulling 5-star themes out. So there was this 5-star theme iteration with a previous superintendent. And in that model, schools were assigned a specific set of themes, no rhyme or reason that we know of. They were just assigned them. In 2017-18, when Academies of Louisville was launched by Christy Rogers at that point in time, schools were given the option to opt in. And there was an agreement between the district and the school that if you opt into this work, these are the things that you have to do. You have to structure your school this way. You have to provide these experiences to students. There was a whole model behind it and specific goals that came with it. Christy would tell you the story that she expected 3 or 4 schools to raise their hands and say we're in, and actually 11 raised their hands and said, we want to be in. And she was bold enough and crazy enough to say, all right, let's do it. And it's been thriving ever since. And then we added 3 more schools, and then we added another school. And that's how we got, to those 15. So it's really designed with the student and their learning experience in mind. I don't think 5-star themes was so much that way, but this is really student centric, and trying to ensure that students are prepared for life.
And when you see it, and I will be a testament, when you see that actualize in a classroom where the students are, you really get to a tipping point where you can, and I can think of, Mr. Riddle at Seneca, where you go in there and the kids are leading the class.
Yep.
They're supporting each other. They're cheering each other on. They're giving critical feedback.
Yep.
And it's it's very powerful when absolutely done correctly. Well, with anything, right? So
Totally agree.
you say opportunity. How it obviously it takes a little bit of a runway to get to really looking at things. How are the business partners? Do you have data that says these business partners have hired out of the academies?
In some instances, we do. We are actually this year will be the first year, I should say, that we are working to more stringently track that. I can anecdotally give you some partners that we know have hired a bunch of our kids. Trilogy, Norton, Wirecrafters, which is a small welding company here in town. I think almost half of their employees have come through us.
Awesome.
And come out with welding certs. So there are entities like that we can speak to that we know give our students opportunities while they're in school. And as our students are successful with those opportunities, hire them afterwards. We're in the midst of a brand new initiative with Norton and Galen that started this past summer, where Norton is paying the tuition for a handful of our students to go through Galen's nursing program. And then when they exit with their degrees, they go work for Norton.
Right.
So these students have literally left high school. They're working on their remaining senior credits online independently and going to Galen College of Nursing simultaneously, knowing that there's a Norton job waiting for them. And as long as they navigate successfully, it's debt free for them.
Right.
So I think it speaks to the fact that, we have partners that really need employees, and they are willing to invest in their employees as they are our students, to help to cultivate in them what they want them to be, so they'll be successful employees and stay with their companies long after they've graduated high school.
So JCPS has their fair share of naysayers. Some would say it's a product of Louisville, or Louisville's a product of JCPS. I'm not exactly sure of which one.
Yeah, chicken or the egg.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. It seems anecdotally that Louisville's moving toward more of like a manufacturing workforce and things like that. Is that worrisome to you? Am I making up a reality? Is it something that JCPS can impact?
Wow, those are three really big questions rolled into one. So worrisome, no.
Yeah.
Because I see a great deal of promise and potential in our educational system. One of the things that I've been very intentional about in my vision for the high school zone in these 4 years that I've served as the assistant superintendent is ensuring that we have high rigor course opportunities even in career technical education. So I always give myself as an example. I was not a strong math student. English came naturally for me. Social studies came pretty easily for me. Math and science, that was not my thing.
Right. There's reading base and number base.
Right.
Yeah.
I was a reading base for sure. And I was also a band kid. Band was 7th period.
Yep.
So I knew I had to get through 6 periods of the day to get to band 7th period, where my passion was.
Okay.
So we have kids now who work through courses that don't always come easy to them in order to get to that career tech ed pathway class, right? But the fact that they persevere through those challenges to get to that class, and then 82% of them last year graduate post-secondary ready, meaning they already have some college credit, or they have an industry certification, or they have both.
So you're saying 82% of high school students in Jefferson County
of our senior class,
of the senior class,
6,600 seniors last year.
Awesome.
82% of them graduated from us on time.
Diploma plus.
So no, I'm not worried, because I see numbers like that.
Yeah.
And I go, clearly we're doing something right in conjunction with our community partners who come to the table with us to make sure kids are ready for life after high school.
What are the do you have the 4-year analytics on it? Like, that is a northern trend for graduation rate, right?
It's the high. So that's the highest post-secondary readiness number we've ever had. About 88% of our students graduated last year, if I remember the number correctly. That is our highest ever. That's numbers from last year. The year before that was our highest ever. And the year before that was our highest ever, right? So I'm not a statistician by trade.
But it feels like it's okay.
Yeah. There's a line of increase happening there. So no, like, I'm not worried, because I do feel like we are working hard and effectively in preparing our students for life after high school.
Right.
Now, there is always this dynamic that schools don't exist absent their community. Schools are not islands. And so things that happen in the community always flex on and impact your school. That's been stitched into the fabric of the history of JCPS for forever.
Did you intentionally go there, or did you unintentionally go? Because that was something I wanted to talk to.
Well, I'll go there because I feel like it's relevant when we talk about that interaction between community and district. So, the 70s were a fraught time in Jefferson County. There were two school systems. There was Jefferson County, which is kind of that outer, more rural portion of JCPS then. And there was Louisville Public Schools, which were more inner city. If you'll remember, Brown versus Board of Education came down in the mid-50s that said separate but equal was no longer constitutional. Schools had to integrate. And in Jefferson County, integration still hadn't taken place by the early 70s.
Right.
So it was actually by decree of a federal court judge that desegregation was ordered. And in order to accomplish that, the two school systems had to merge.
Right.
That was our first historical instance that I can recall of busing, where students who lived inside the urban core, who were primarily minority and poor, were bused out to county schools, and students outside the city and the county were bused in. And that's what helped to foster integration. And so you'll hear people who are longtime residents of Jefferson County talk about living through busing. Being bused from the West End out to Fairdale, out to Okolona.
I went from Rockford Lane, PRP area to Whitney Young.
There you go. So you go from PRP right to the heart of the West End. And that was the way to integrate schools for forever. And then that became challenged, was challenged by a parent in the 2000s. And
was this the Central High School?
So that was part of it. That was one. And then there was a later challenge in the mid 2000s that really tore apart the fabric of that student assignment plan because it was based on race. And so the district was told it couldn't base student assignment on race anymore. So the district had to think of other ways. Free and reduced lunch it's always been a proxy for poverty. And so that became the dividing line basically. And that went for a while, but our district is 70-something% free and reduced lunch now. So that's not really a fair proxy anymore. We have white kids, black kids, multilingual learner students that are poor. I mean, it's the nature of our community. You as a realtor know that there's a great deal of our community that's broken on the proxy of socioeconomic status. And even then within that socioeconomic strata by race. So you'll find poor black people that live together, poor white people that live together, rich white people that live together, rich black people live together, and the middle class is maybe mixed and may not be mixed depending on what part of town you're in. So we still battle some of
By the way, as a realtor, I do not agree with it.
You don't agree with what I'm saying?
I agree with your statement. I do not support it.
I got it. Thank you. I was like, no, this is the truth. I mean, that's the way it is. I'm not saying that's how it should be, which is what you're saying too. But by design, then, we have to think as a school district about how we help students understand individuals that are different from themselves and be able to engage productively and positively with individuals that are different from themselves. And so, I'll circle all the way back to the Academy's work. that takes kids that have similar interests,
Right.
but come from very different backgrounds and mix them all together.
Yep.
And they learn how to engage with each other, how to support each other, how to work cooperatively with each other, and come out with some soft skills that are a little different. So, when you say, like, does JCPS make the community? Does community make JCPS? Like, there is definitely a relational interaction there. And there are times where things that occur in the community flex on the school. There are times where things that happen in the school district flex on the community. I'd like to say our work around post-secondary readiness and working hard to ensure that students graduate ready for life after high school is having a positive impact on our community, and positioning us to be a community of people who understand how to get along with each other, and can work with each other, whether it's alongside each other for someone else that may be different from you, and be able to lead our society in a more productive vein.
Yeah, at a high, I don't want to minimize this, but whether you like it or not, you're going to you're going to spend the rest, anybody in this world today is going to spend the rest of their life around people that don't look or act or have the same cultural upbringing,
right, or
socioeconomical upbringing.
Right.
I'm in a place in Louisville that I didn't experience that growing up, right? So if we're not learning the soft skill of, I wouldn't say assimilation, but acceptance. Society, I'm getting really high here, but societally, we're going to have a lot of issues. Like,
for sure,
we have to be a melting pot.
Well, and I think part of the root of the divides that we see now, people talk about it being political. I boil it down even further than that and say it's literally people not willing to accept people who look differently than them, think differently than them, believe differently than them, live differently than them. And at the
make different amounts of money.
Make different amounts of money than they do, live in a different part of town than they live. Like, at the end of the day, you got to be able to accept people for who they are.
Right.
Like, at their core, they are a human.
They're human beings. Yep.
And they have things to offer, and you have to be able and willing to accept that. And I'd like to think that a lot of education is helping to build that in our students, and a lot less of it is the math, English, science, social studies we still emphasize it, but we recognize in our day and time, we have to build people who are good humans.
Right.
So that when they graduate, they live in a society in a productive way. Look, these people are going to be taking care of me at some point.
Right.
Like, seriously.
Right.
Like, when I go to a hospital in 15 years, it's going to be a kid that came through high school at this point in time who is providing patient care tech or drawing my blood or writing my prescription.
Yep.
And I want to make sure that they see me as a human and accept me.
Yeah. I got checked in 3 weeks ago. I had an annual checkup, and a young lady goes, "Mr. Smith."
See?
And she's a nurse now.
Yeah.
I had her at Frost Middle School, and she's a nurse.
You're old. You're old.
I am old, yeah. But you talk about something that's just like, I had this same conversation with a guest earlier, is like, it makes the back of my eyes water. Like, these are kids that I wanted to choke in the classroom, right? And now they're like, "Hey, you remember when you taught me this?
Yeah.
Can you help me find a house?"
And I lived that too. I remember returning to Jefferson County as an executive administrator, and I went to visit Butler High School. So I was making my rounds, connecting with principals, building relationship. And William Allen, who's principal at Butler, he and I were walking the building, and we go up to the third floor. And we turn off a stairwell, and I look, and there's a woman at the end of the hallway, and she takes off running full speed toward me. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know who this is. And she reaches me and gives me the biggest bear hug ever. Mr. Ellison. And I looked at her and I went, "Addie?" She was in the first senior class I ever taught. Graduating class of 2002 in Owensboro High School.
That's awesome.
And she's teaching here.
Right.
Her sister teaches in elementary school. Q, you know Q, is an in-school security monitor at J-Town High School. I walk into J-Town one day, "Ellison." I'm like, "Q? Like, what are you doing?" "I'm security monitor." I'm like, oh my God. So, you see them in workplaces, you see them in doctor's offices. I'm seeing them in our schools. And there's very little that gives an educator more satisfaction than to see kids that they poured into pouring into the next generation of kids, right? It makes you feel like you did something right along the way, that they caught something of that teacher bug and are really trying to help bring up the next generation.
Do any of them say, do you remember when you did this? And you're like, there's no way I did that.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I mean, I was an assistant principal for 10 years, Jimmy. So yeah. Do you remember when you suspended me for that?
Yeah.
Yes, sadly I do.
Do you remember when? Yeah, there was a young man. He was. Anyways, I won't. Yeah, we could go through some stories. You talk about opportunity, and I always like to go down this rabbit hole with you, just because it challenges me as who I am, and I think and my hope is it challenges you as who you are. How do we create more opportunity in the workforce for socioeconomic classes and diverse individuals that haven't had historically opportunities that they would that other segments of the population have had?
Yeah, I think there are two introspective steps first. First is you acknowledge your biases, and then second, you suspend your biases. So we all carry biases,
right?
By virtue of how we were raised, where we were raised, we carry
by being a human.
Correct. We carry certain beliefs about groups of people, and when we can identify an individual as belonging to a particular group, we graft those biases on that individual.
Right.
That happens a lot with class. And so I think one of the key steps is recognizing, okay, this person lives in this part of town. What bias does that bring up right away? And acknowledge it. All right, that's my bias. I have to suspend that bias to see that individual as a human individual. If I carried a bias about people who grew up in Portland, I would be biased against you.
Right.
Because I know where you grew up.
Right.
We've had those conversations, right? If people,
my dad was in Portland. I was in Shively.
Well, okay,
Yeah.
Shively.
Yeah.
Either one.
But
it's one and the same in a lot of ways as
Yeah.
far as the biases people carry. But you're right that you had family in Portland and you grew up in Shively.
My family created biases for my dad that he thought he was uppity for going to Shively.
See?
Yeah.
Right. So I'm moving, and socioeconomically, he was moving up the ladder, but it didn't necessarily make him any better than anyone who lived in Portland. So part of it is suspending the bias and then seeing the skills that the people bring to the table. We have kids in the West End, in the South End, in the East End, Center City, who earn industry certifications every single school year. Just because a kid lives in the West End versus the East End doesn't mean the East End kid is any more prepared than the West End kid to walk in and interview for the same job.
Right.
But if there's a bias based upon their address of 36th and Garland, for example, that kid has less of a shot.
Right.
So we have to be able to look at people, A, for who they are, and B, for the skills that they possess and can bring to the work.
That you just said something that I think, and I've been in education or around education for 20 years now, probably. You said suspending bias. That's the first time I've heard that. And I think, reflectively, I'm like, okay, I've always challenged this whole, a little bit, not challenged it, but like, maybe even I'll say this and permission to be human. I don't see color. That's something that people say. That's bullshit because you see color. You're a different color than I.
Colorblind. But
to suspend these predisposition biases that's actually the first time I've ever heard that, which I appreciate. I don't know if it's a maturation of this process that maybe I wasn't ready to hear it, or is it a new term in education?
It's not a new term. I mean, it's all over, race theory and bias conversations. The goal is ultimately to eliminate bias. Right. That's the ultimate goal.
But I don't think you're ever going to do that.
And that's the challenge. And you'll never do it if you don't first acknowledge it.
Right.
And then work to set it aside. Researchers might call it bracketing, right? So, okay, I see this over here and I'm going to set it to the side so I can be more objective as I'm looking this direction. I call it suspending bias. Like, okay, I've got it and I'm actively going to set it over here. Like I know I've got it,
Right.
And I have to be honest that I've got it, but I can't graft that bias onto this individual. I've got to see this individual as an individual. What do they bring to this relationship, to this workplace that can help make things better?
Right.
Right. Because that should be the ultimate goal. Like, as an employer, you don't hire people just for the sake of hiring them. You hire them because they have a certain skill set and you feel like they're going to make your team better.
Right.
That's your ultimate goal. But if you see them through a certain lens that prevents you from fully seeing their capacity and potential, you never give people the opportunity to come in and make them. I mean, the reason why I've gained promotions that I've gained is because somebody saw potential. Right. Somebody saw you might be a good administrator. It was my department chair in Owensboro, Linda Kingsley. Have you thought about what you're going to do for your master's? No, ma'am. You need to pursue administration. Administration?
Right.
Yeah, you'd be a good administrator.
Yeah. I just want to teach.
Right. And I did it.
Yep.
And then Tito saw potential in me and hired me.
Yep.
Right. Folks in Shelby County saw potential in me and hired me. Somebody in JSPS saw potential in me again, hired me. Then I got promoted because somebody saw, right? And in every one of those instances, I'm sure people at that table had some biases that they could have injected into that interview situation that they either overlooked or suspended, so that they could see what I would bring to the table to make things better.
Yep.
And that's the ultimate goal of any employer, is that you're trying to hire people who are going to make your company, your team, your work better.
And that's ultimately the goal of education, is to become productive members in society and be able
Correct.
What is the what is the demographic breakdown of Jefferson County now?
Oh, wow. So we are majority minority. We have a large population. I don't have the numbers right on me, but a large population of African-American students, a large population of Latinx students as well.
Latinx.
Yes. So that we used to, the state still says Hispanic.
Okay.
But in Jefferson County, we draw students.
Cuba.
From
Mexico, Guatemala,
Colombia,
Ecuador,
Venezuela, right? From all over Latin countries. So it's hard to say Hispanic,
right?
Because that's really one general reach. We're drawing from all over,
right?
And then now we're about 20% multilingual learner,
right?
Which those are students who come to us from other countries, and they've either likely had interrupted education, they have limited English proficiency, or they have strong English proficiency, but English is not their native language.
Right. And we no longer say English is a second language because it does a disservice to a lot of those kids. Have, if you grew up in certain parts of Europe or Central America or South America, you knew 3 or 4 languages.
Correct.
You're Portuguese.
Correct.
You're multilingual.
And English, frankly, may have been your third language.
Right.
You might have known Spanish, Portuguese, and English, right? Or French. I think about students who come to us who, interestingly enough, born in the States, but know French and Creole and English, right? They know 3 languages.
Right.
So, I mean, we have this large population now of students who are multilingual learners. And that changes the face of education, because it used to be you only thought about race and socioeconomic status, right? And those were your primary drivers in how you developed curriculum, or in how you engaged students in class and in coursework. And now that's not the case. Now we have to think about the fact that literally 20% of our population are multilingual learners. They're speaking more than one language. And the primary language in their home might not be English. And that creates some challenges for teachers, obviously. But it also puts us in a position where we have to resource schools and teachers differently to be able to meet those challenges. And it gives us an even more rich opportunity to help our students learn how to accept individuals for who they are, and see the potential and positivity that rests in individuals versus maybe some of the things that we would consider as barriers.
Right. Love that. All right, man. God, I miss having education conversations.
Should come around more often, Jimmy Smith.
Hey, I spend a lot of time at Seneca.
You do spend a lot of time at Seneca. You're just not there when I'm there.
I'm just going to have to talk to Emily about that.
I'm not there when you're there.
Yeah, we'll have to coordinate.
Yeah, we will.
All right, so we're going to move into a little part I call peace, profit, and purpose. So you can pick which one you want to talk about. first. We're going to hit all three.
Okay.
What brings you peace? What's your purpose on this earth? And how do you measure success, either professionally or personally? That's the profit piece.
Okay.
Or you can hit both of them.
All right. You'll have to prompt me probably
right.
after I do one. I'll go with peace.
Okay, perfect.
And then you'll have to prompt me on the others. So there are two things I feel like bring me as an individual peace. First is my relationship with God. There are things that happen that I don't understand. And I remember when my father passed away, December of 2020. And I remember talking to my brother not long after that. And he just kept asking why. And I'm like, I don't have a good answer for you.
Yep.
And some things I can explain, but things that I cannot explain, I accept by faith. And he just looked at me and he was like, I don't even know how you can say that right now. I'm like, I don't know how I can't say that right now. Like, I don't have a choice. So there are really difficult things that have occurred that if it had not been for my faith, I would have been knocked on my butt.
Right.
And would have been very lost and hopeless. The other thing I think along with that is I find myself in my mid-40s with a stronger sense of self, a stronger understanding of who I am at my core, what my core values and beliefs are, why I feel like I'm here, and the impact that I can work with others to have more broadly in our society. And when I see data come out, or when I have interactions with former students, or when leaders in schools say positive things about my work, it's like, okay, that's why I'm here.
Right.
And so it's my faith and that continually deepening understanding of self that helped me put my head to pillow at night. I work hard every day to do what it is that I'm called to do, and to do it as best as I can.
Yep.
And if at the end of the day, I can look back over the day reflectively and say, I did the best I could today, and I was true to who I am at my core, then I'm good.
You can lay it down at night.
I can lay it down at night.
Awesome. All right. So I'm going to go straight to purpose because you kind of hit it with understanding self.
Yeah. So purpose for me, especially vocationally, is about speaking positively and creating opportunities for kids who are what I was. So let me unpack that a little bit. Grew up in the inner city of Cincinnati.
Right.
Mom and dad worked really hard to make my brother and I think we weren't poor. And we were poor.
Right.
I had no idea.
Every Christmas, I looked at my parents. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
So here's why I believed in Santa Claus for so long, because we were so damn poor. There's no way my parents could have bought all that stuff unless there was Santa Claus.
Correct. And I didn't realize how they were squirreling money away all year long.
Yeah.
Like Christmas planning for them started in January. Right. To make and December wasn't big. Now some years it was for us, but most years it was smaller on the scale if my kids were evaluating it, but it was meaningful to us because I started to realize we don't have money. When I got in high school and saw kids who lived with money, I'm like, oh my gosh, we don't have money.
Right.
But I had a roof over my head. I had food every day. I had clothes that fit. When I needed new clothes, they showed up, right? Like I had what I needed. I didn't always have everything I wanted, but I had everything I needed.
Right.
Even when times were tough and real lean. Dad got laid off a couple of times, and there were 3, 4, 6 month stretches in there that were really tight and lean. I learned to appreciate red beans, cornbread, and white rice. And by white rice, I mean minute rice out of the box that took 5 minutes in the pot.
With butter and sugar.
With butter and maybe butter and sugar, right? You might not have that in that, right? And it wasn't butter; it was country crock at that.
Yeah.
So it was. I
don't even like real butter because we never had real butter.
I love real butter because I didn't have real butter.
So so we had 2 jars of jelly at all times, grape and strawberry.
There you go.
My dad got the strawberry. Everybody else had to eat grape because it's probably
hilarious.
like $2 more. Anyway, sorry.
This is mine.
Yeah.
So like I grew up thinking that we were fine.
Yeah.
And probably my junior, senior year in high school, I really started to realize like how poor we were. And, but we never wanted for any need, which I credit back to my parents' faith for sure.
Right.
Because I know there were times they were up at night trying to figure out how to make things work. But I'll never forget, as a poor black kid from the inner city of Cincinnati who didn't know he was poor, knew he was black, but didn't know he was poor, and an encounter with a guidance counselor my sophomore year in high school. Was our annual guidance session.
Right.
She came to our math class, which was geometry, pulled us each out into the class, out of class with a desk, had our freshman year transcript and reviewed it with us, and also had our first semester sophomore year grades. And her name was Miss Fuller, Rosalind Fuller.
Okay.
Never forget her. She was about
Your memory is impeccable.
She was about 6 foot tall, light skin, black woman, glasses, wore like a little curled up bob hairdo. She was kind of wide hipped, but she wore these like skirt suits. So skirt and the blazer. Anyway, she had on a tan skirt, a dark brown blazer that day, and a cream blouse. Never forgetting her little round glasses. And so she comes to the door, Joseph. And that's how you knew she didn't know me.
Right.
She called me Joseph. Right. My mama calls me Joseph, and my middle name, my last name, and the third when I'm in trouble.
Right.
Right. Don't nobody call me Joseph. So she called Joseph. So I come out and we sit down. She goes, I'm looking at your grades. Do you see your grades? I said, yes, ma'am. She said, what is it you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I want to be a criminal defense attorney. And she pulled her glasses down, peered over her glasses at me and said, you need to think about something else. You'll never be an attorney because you make C's. You can go back into class now. Like, that's it. Like,
Right.
that's our whole guidance that's our guidance conversation, right? Like, she wrecked my world.
Right.
Shattered it.
Her delivery was terrible, but what she was saying was wrong. Wasn't wrong.
Both,
Yeah.
right? And so I went home that evening after band practice and was sitting at the dinner table. And I wasn't the kid who answered fine and okay. Like, I typically gave a reasonable answer. You can tell I like words. And my parents asked me how was school that day while we're eating. I said, it was fine. And they both looked at me. Did something happen? No. So my dad sets his fork down. He said, what happened at school? Like, it was a tell.
Yeah.
And I was like, nothing. And he said, what happened? And I just started crying. And then my mom put her fork down and said, okay, what happened at school today? So I recounted this encounter with Miss Fuller. Cried the whole way through. And when I got to the end, they were quiet the whole time. I got to the end and my dad looked at me and said, son, you've got two choices. You can spend the rest of your life proving her right, or you can spend the rest of your life proving her wrong. Dry your eyes, make your choice, move forward. He picked his fork up and went back to eating. And I was like, oh. And I spent that night thinking about what he said. And I made a decision that night that I was going to spend the rest of my life proving Miss Fuller wrong.
Right.
So when I earned my high school diploma, I said, how about that, Miss Fuller? My bachelor's degree, how about that, Miss Fuller? When I walked to get my master's, how about that, Miss Fuller? When I got hooded with my doctorate, how about that, Miss Fuller? Like, literally took every day to prove her wrong.
Did you actually communicate with her and say,
I did not, but I did say it out loud every time.
Did you really?
Because I needed to put in the atmosphere that she was wrong, like dead wrong. And so I know there are kids who have had negativity like that spoken into their lives. And I need them to understand that there are people who have made it, who had similar negativity spoken into their lives as proof that you can make it.
Right.
And so part of that is then ensuring there are opportunities in our schools for them to be able to make it.
Right.
That's why we have dual credit classes in our career tech ed pathways, because you may never pass a math dual credit class, but you sure as heck may pass a marketing dual credit class or a welding dual credit class at JCTC. And I need you to see that you can be college material. It's about linking into your interests and applying yourself appropriately. So we provide those types of opportunities so kids can see the potential, they can exist in their lives and pursue it. Like, that's why I do what I do every day. And that's why I fight hard for our leaders, for the resources they need, and for the programs that we have, because I know that it creates opportunity for kids who have been told they have zero opportunity and have started to believe it.
All right, what brings you? Moving on. What if Miss Fuller actually knew that's how you were motivated, and she's like, I'm gonna mess with this kid, and it's gonna be hold my beer. Do you think she was that intuitive?
No.
Okay.
She didn't know me.
Okay. Yeah, you said
she didn't know me.
She called you Joseph.
She didn't know me. Like, there were teachers. So I'll tell you. I'll give you the antithesis. Cindy Mahan was my junior and senior English teacher. I had her for English 11 AA and for English Lit AP senior year. I had no desire to go into AA, which was honors English, my junior year. She made me.
Right.
And I had no desire because Rosalind Fuller said I could. I mean, my counselor said I can't do it, so I'm not even going to. I'll just go to this class. I'll get my A because it's a bunny class and it'll be fine. She said, you will not.
Right.
You will be challenged and you will take my class. And I'm like, I don't want to take your class. You're taking my class. When I filled out my schedule card, I didn't sign up for her class. And when I got my schedule in the fall, I had her class.
Right.
And then at the end of that junior class, she goes, I don't see you on my list for English Lit next year because I'm not taking that class. You're taking that class.
Right.
No, Miss Mahan, I'm not. I didn't sign up for English Lit AP. And when I got my schedule in the fall, I had English Lit AP.
I think Miss Fuller did it.
I know Miss Fuller didn't do it. It was Cindy Mahan. I guarantee it. But it was because she knew me. She saw the potential in me, and she wanted to maximize that. And she needed me to prove to myself that I could do high level work, so I would go on to school. And she knew that.
So I had a history professor in college. His name was Dr. Jeffrey Cole. He didn't know me either, but I had him in class and wrote something. He said, "That's pretty good." But he said something to the effect of, "I'm kind of surprised that you were able to do that." And I was like, "What do you mean by that?" He goes, "I sit behind y'all every chapel and watch you and your baseball buddies act like fools." But for that moment on, I was like, hold my beer.
Right.
Like, I'm going to show you.
I'm going to show you.
I'm capable.
I can do this work.
Like I'm skating because So anyways, all right.
But he knew you because he had watched you.
Right.
Right. Fuller didn't know me.
Right.
So no, she wrote me off.
Yep.
And my dad wrote me back in, and I'm grateful for that.
Love it. Yeah. Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you are correct.
Yep.
One of my favorite quotes by Henry Ford. Actually, probably the only quote I know of Henry Ford. Yeah. All right. Last thing, profit. How do you win personally, professionally?
Ooh.
You're keeping a scorecard. That's I call profit's a scorecard.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me in this work as an educator, professionally, that scorecard is the number of kiddos we get across the line successfully. So that means on time and with that additional something else. Right. And so I take that work very personally. I think most educators take their work very personally. I take that metric, that graduation and post-secondary readiness metric personally. And so when I talk with my leaders about that work, they sense the passion in me for it, because that's important. On a personal level, the scorecard's my kids. I think anybody who has children, you work hard to make sure they have better than what you had.
Yep.
And I've worked really hard to provide that for my little rascals, whether they realize it or not now or later. They better realize it later. We scrap and scrape to make sure they're better off. But seeing character deposits that we've made in them come out in their engagement with other people, or in the things that they do as humans, it's always refreshing. You don't always see that in your kids, and so when you do, like, I take that as a tally mark. I'm doing something right at some point in time and pouring something decent into them.
I'm pretty confident I'm winning on that department, but I get so frustrated with myself because I'm like, you just kind of think like, why are you doing that? Why did you not pick that up? Why are you not cleaning up your? But then there's that one moment you're like, they're getting it.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Yep. You see it.
Fine.
You see it from time. They give you these glimpses where, like, okay, I might be pushing a productive human into the world at some point. So, on the personal level, it's definitely them.
Yep.
They are my heart and have from the day they showed up. And, I want all that the world can afford them that's positive and great. And like any good parent, I want nothing negative to come their way.
Right.
And you have to coach and support them through the negative that does come. But at the end of the day, when I see those positive traits come out, I always feel good and validated as a parent.
There's no doubt in my mind they're going to be fine.
Boy, I sure hope so.
Brother, I love you. Thank you for coming out today.
Buddy.
Yeah. Good seeing you.
You
All
too.
right, y'all take care. My dude.